Coming up on Backchecking the Bolts.
Going into this series, we thought Tampa had the advantage in depth in the bottom six. But in this series, it has been the complete opposite. It has been Montreal who's gotten the majority of the bottom six scoring. Who on the Lightning has disappointed you in this series?
Just as far as, you got to start getting something out of these Yanni Gord lines, even the Gergensons line. I know they're not out there to score goals. But as we're seeing, if these top two lines are going to cancel each other out, it's got to be the bottom six that has to find a way to put the puck in the net.
Welcome to Backchecking the Bolts. Backchecking the Bolts is your cup of coffee to get you the latest on the Tampa Bay Lightning. Join host Jason Linkus and the managing editor of Raw Charge, Justin Godfrey, as they break down the Lightning's most recent games and go beyond the highlights, telling you what the box scores didn't. It's time to drop the puck.
It is the Backchecking the Bolts instant reaction to Game 5, Montreal with a 3-2 victory over the Lightning in Tampa. The Lightning are now on the brink of elimination for the fourth straight year in the first round. Let's bring in Raw Charge's Justin Godfrey, who you can read each and every day at www.rawcharge.com. Justin, it's the same story in this series. They can't seem to solve Jakub Dobish. What was your first impression?
I just thought Montreal played a really good game last night. They keep doing the things that they need to do to win these games, whereas the Lightning aren't quite getting to that level. I think for the most part, the Lightning have played pretty well. We broke it down in the preview yesterday over at Raw Charge that, this has been a pretty even series. And what did you expect out of teams that were, basically neck and neck in the regular season? But, in these games, for whatever reason, especially early on, Montreal has been able to find the goal as opposed to the Lightning getting the chance but not being able to put the puck in the net.
Going into this series, we thought Tampa had the advantage in depth in the bottom six. But in this series, it has been the complete opposite. It has been Montreal who's gotten the majority of the bottom six scoring. Who on the Lightning has disappointed you in this series?
Just as far as, you got to start getting something out of these Yanni Gord lines, even the Gergensons line. I know they're not out there to score goals. But as we're seeing, if these top two lines are going to cancel each other out, it's got to be the bottom six that has to find a way to put the puck in the net. Good to see Dominic James score. I think he's been one of the better players in this series. And the fact that he just took it straight to the net and scored is a good sign. Outside of the faceoff dot, I thought James had a really good game. Then you had Gage Gonzalez, who looked good at times, but he was also probably responsible for that first goal against. He got beat along the wall. So they're, again, doing a lot of great things, do a lot of good things, a lot of things that are good enough to win. But at the end, it's just, for the lack of a better way of putting it, just hasn't been good enough. They haven't found that second switch that you need sometimes for these playoff type victories.
Justin, I want to read some stats off to you. Anthony Cirelli, no goals, 2 assists. Darren Radish, 1 goal, 1 assist. Braden Point, 1 goal. Corey Perry doesn't have a point all series. At what point do these guys need to be drivers and not passengers?
I mean, I think you kind of throw Cirelli out of that. I mean, they go in and, they tell Cirelli, hey, if you shut down the Cole Caulfield, the Nick Suzuki line, and don't score a goal, that's fine. That's fine with us. The theory is that the Lightning have enough depth around them that they could score, but like Braden Point stop on the puck in the net, off the mic, we've talked about Kucherov lately and his playoff struggles, if you will.
One goal in his last 19 games.
Yeah. I mean, that's 4 series where, he's still getting points. He's still getting assists and stuff like that. But, do you remember anything he did last night? Really? I mean, he kind of was taken out of that game. He had, a couple looks and he had shots on goal, but a lot of his shots are coming from the perimeter, which he's got a great shot, but it's not dangerous. He's just not getting those, in quality, in close chances. And so at some point, someone's got to step it up. It's been all Brandon Hagel. It's been Jake Gensel. God forbid what the series would look like if Hagel wasn't 6 goals deep.
You had mentioned about shots coming from the perimeter. Is this as simple as the Lightning just need to get to the net and get some dirty goals?
I mean, we've been talking about it, pretty much all series is that's how you'll win. You got to generate these high quality chances. But let's face it, there's another team out there. Let's give Montreal their due. Their defensive structure has been fantastic the entire series. They just don't get out of their shape. They drop back. The defensemen press just enough to let the forwards catch up, so that there's no gaps for the Lightning to exploit. I mean, one thing from watching that game from basically behind the net is there's just the space just isn't there for the Lightning. They love to drive the net. They love to drive into the zone, curl back, and drop it back to the defenseman coming. And with the way the defenders are playing for Montreal, they're pressing them just enough that they can't get deep, and then the forwards are right on top of them. So that drop pass isn't there. The Lightning love to work it from side to side diagonally in the neutral zone. That's not there. There's just nothing in the center of the ice right now. And, that's credit to Montreal for that. At some point, the Lightning have to figure out a way to break it or just change the way they play and just start driving the net. One of the nice things about the two goals is both were almost identical. Their shots off off that right wing. And it worked. I think you get Dovish moving around a little bit. He loves to come out to challenge and then drop back. So he's a big dude. That's a lot of open spaces. I think the Gensel goal was, proof of that. He's kind of moving around and that opened up the 5-hole. A little bit more of that, some more shots off the rush maybe, but you got to be getting to the rebounds and you got to be getting them, got to somehow figure out how to move those defensemen out of the middle of the ice.
Let's go back to the Dominic James goal. 1-0. James comes in. It's 1-1. The building's on fire. You have some momentum, and then they give up a goal right away. Yep. How much momentum, how much of a drag was that out of the Tampa Bay Lightning?
It just sucked the energy out of the building. I think you could see the Lightning kind of hang their shoulders a little bit. Montreal just basically scored all the momentum goals, right? They scored the first goal of the game. They scored it early. They scored that, that goal 11 seconds after the Lightning had tied it up. And then they scored in the first minute of the third period. I mean, those are all big momentum goals. It's all the stuff you don't want to give up. You don't want to give up the goal at the first 2 or last 2 minutes of a period. You don't want to give up a goal on the next shift after you scored. And it's been, a little thing here, a little thing there. Like we said, Gaja Konaslavas got beat on that first goal. He just frankly got beat. The guy skated around him. And you can't have that. Second goal, the Doc goal, I think was, Vasilevsky makes a nice poke shot, but it hits his skate and Doc's able to kick it to his stick and put it in. The third goal was a bad line change. I mean, Vasi has to have that shot. It's not a difficult shot. It's a good location over the glove, but he makes that save 99% of the time. But the fact that the Lightning allowed Tessier wide open. I mean, Lane Hudson had a long stretch pass and it wasn't one of these quick ones either. Hudson had a putt for a while, looks up, he's like, okay, yeah, if you're going to give this to me, great. And, he hits it right on the stick blade. Tessier's in alone. There's nobody challenging him, and he just beats Vasilevsky. So, it's these little things that keep breaking down on them. And every time it happens, it's in the back of the net. So they're not getting those bounces. The Lightning, they've had their looks. They had plenty of looks. I mean, if you look right before the Tessier goal, they put one off the post. Kucherov is right there. The puck's there. He just has to sweep it in. And like us around the green, he just kind of duffs the shot. His stick goes under the puck and rolls over the top. We've all been there, right? A little birdie chip, and it just kind of, you fluff it. So brutal.
Justin, though, let's talk about the face-off dot. In the third period, we saw Jake Evans
No, we don't have to.
Yeah, well, I think we do, because Jake Evans was out there constantly in the third period, and I think the final stats was he won 87% of his faceoffs. We had talked about this at the trade deadline. I know I was a big proponent of them going out and getting a Luke Glendening type of person, that Sam Carrick guy that you could throw on your bottom six to win faceoffs. Puck possession is so important in the playoffs. You had mentioned Cirelli off the air won 50% of his draws. Did anyone else do anything in the faceoff circle?
There was somebody else who was like 6 and 7 in the draw, so they're like 45%. But you looked at Dominic James was 0 for 8. I think I added it up. If you pull out Cirelli, the rest of the folks were 25%, I think, on the draws. And if you've ever been to a Lightning game, one of the stats that they keep up on the Big Jumbotron is the faceoffs. And you just look at it throughout the game, and Montreal's constantly at 70% of the draws. I think during our discussion, it came out that, you're probably a little bit more of a proponent on face-offs, but the Lightning just weren't winning any of them. Like, they weren't winning the important ones. They weren't winning the ones in the middle of the ice.
They
So
weren't
it's
even
tough.
contested.
Yeah, a lot
They
of them
were
were
clean
clean.
wins.
Yeah, a lot of them were clean wins. And, you mentioned it out there as well. At the end of the game when they're pushing, if you can't win one cleanly there, it's just so tough. And, Montreal was able to clear a couple times off of face-off wins. But part of it's Nick Paul wasn't in the game. Let's face it. I thought game 4, the Lightning were okay. Even game 3, I think they were okay in the face-off dot. He just takes so many important ones. And Cooper was using him as that face-off guy. He was putting Nick Paul out there on the power play to win a face-off. He was putting him in the defensive zone with, people who aren't his line mates just to go out and win a draw. It's kind of tough for the Lightning an hour before the game. You realize he can't play. They said illness, so hopefully it's a temporary thing and he's back for Friday's match. But, you take him out, you put Geeky in, and he's a young kid. He's not savvy to the ways of the face-off dot, maybe, and they got schooled. So, would it have been nice to pick up a Glendening, somebody like that? Sure. I'm guessing the price was just too much to pay for the Lightning, and you kind of
Glendening was on waivers.
Yeah, that's true. But
honestly, much cheaper than that.
But again, where were the Lightning in the waiver claim, order? So maybe they didn't put a claim in for him, but when Philly picked him up, right?
Yeah,
and he's done it in the playoffs, right? I mean, you probably watched a lot of that series, and Glendening's out there and he wins a draw here or there, or he ties it up. And that was Cooper's big thing early in the series. It's not all on the center, right? Face-offs are a team win. And what he wanted to see is, if you're not going to win the draw, at least make it tough for the other team. And I thought they did that kind of in games 3 and 4. They weren't winning the draw, but they were at least making it difficult for Montreal to get possession cleanly out of the face-offs. Didn't get back to that in game 6. It's funny, as bad as they played in games 5 and games 3, I still think they win the series. They haven't been that far off, and you feel like if they do get a little momentum, if they do get a puck to go their way, they can win 2 in a row. They can go up to Montreal. The pressure's on the Canadiens right now, right? They're a young team, but now that 4th win, it's so tough to get. And they're that building's gonna be rocking, and I think the Lightning withstand the storm early, kind of get to their game, and they can pull another one out, and then it's game 7, all bets off. So we'll see how it goes.
Well, Nick Paul was out of the lineup because of an illness. Let's say he's back in. Connor Geeky heads back to the press box. Any other lineup changes do you think you might see? Because right now, the Lightning don't have the magic elixir that's in the press box right now. Someone coming off of an injury, a rookie that they can throw into this lineup. The lineup is what it is. What changes do you think John Cooper makes heading into game 6?
I think a lot of it will depend on either Destu's status or, Victor Hedman's status. One thing the Lightning really missed. Now, let's be 100% clear. Victor Hedman has had a bad year. He has not been 100%. He has not looked like Victor Hedman. But the one weapon in his arsenal that he's always had is that stretch pass. From from the Lightning zone to the offensive zone. Nobody's better at hitting a forward, across 3 lines. What used to be illegal, the old 3-line pass. Back in our day, you couldn't do that, but
the old
he's
2-line
really good at
pass.
that. Exactly.
Face off back in your own zone.
Yeah. I think somebody who can do that stretches that Montreal defense a little bit and kind of pushes some of those gaps that we were talking about a little bit. If Point can get behind the forward lines and challenge a defender one-on-one because Hedman hits him out of the other zone, that's something the Lightning have used to their advantage in the past. The problem with Hedman is, I think if you start Hedman in game 6, you got to go 11-7. You don't know what his conditioning is. You don't know what the status of his injury is. Can he play 20 minutes? And so I think now you're pulling out of another forward. So now you're down at 11-7, which the Lightning have done in the past and they've been okay with, but I don't think that's his preference right now. We had a guy like Bjorkstrand playing. I thought Bjorkstrand, the kid plays so hard. I thought he played hard every shift he was out there, and he can't buy it. He can't buy a shot right now. I think you texted it, during the game. It's like the man just can't buy a shot. He can't buy a goal right now. I thought he played really well. I thought he created a lot of chances, and which is good for the Lightning because they need that defensive effort. But do you pull him out for an 11-7 rotation? That could be the only thing I really see. Because like I said, there's nobody like Scott Sabrin's not going to make a difference, right? Declan Carlisle's not going to make a difference. Steve Santini's not going to make a difference. It is what it is, and they just got to find a way to win with who they have.
Well, Bjorkstrand had a nice play actually in the first period and hit the crossbar off the post. And the guy is just snake bit right now. Justin, earlier today, we were joined by Wesley Lawrence of Defending Big D to talk about the Minnesota Wild Dallas Stars series. If there's been a series as tight as the Montreal Tampa series, it's been the Wild and the Dallas Stars. Let's go to that interview right now and see what Wesley has to say about the Stars and the Wild. Here on Backchecking the Bolts, we always try to give you views on different series, different teams, and today we are pleased to be joined by Wesley Lawrence, defendingbigd.com. You can find all of his writings and on the Stargazing podcast. Wesley, thanks for joining us today.
Hey, my pleasure. I was much more excited about doing this about 24 hours ago, and still excited. Don't get me wrong, but a little bit more depressed than usual. But it's been that kind of year.
That was a tough game last night. It was a game that was in the balance. Boldy got the goal late in the second period. What was the determining factor in that game? And the reason I'm asking this, Wesley, is the power play has been Dallas's cog all series. They have 9 power play goals, but they only have 4 goals at even strength, 3 goals at 5-on-5. Last night, what was that X factor that turned this into the favor of the Wild?
Mistakes. Their first goal was Tyler Myers rushing a pass up the wall that puts it right on, and I apologize, I forget the name of the Wild player on the blue line, puts it on a Wild player stick, immediately goes to Kaprizov down low. There is a then kind of compounding error. Harley and Myers look like they can't figure out who to cover. The end result of that is Kaprizov gets a pair of shots about 3 feet away from Jake Ottinger, and Zuccarello taps it into an empty net on the other side. And I think in a series that has been so defined by tight margins, with the exception of Dallas's game 1 no-show, if you take out empty netters and kind of late game noise, this has been a one goal series throughout the entirety of it. So this is one of those series where you cannot make a single mistake. And Dallas coughed up a puck and led to a goal, and then Dallas took a 2-minute on the ice bench minor that led to a goal, and you just, when you are a light scoring team reliant on your power play, the last thing you can do is give the other team easy chances. And they did that a couple of times, and they've done it a couple of times this series. And you can trace a lot of the ill that has befallen the Dallas Stars falls on, and no, this is not me throwing shade on the Wild, to be very clear. They've been valued for their, for their results, but a lot of the bad that has happened, you can kind of look at blown coverage, easy mistakes, bad penalties. Like it's been a series where Dallas has found ways to make it harder rather than easier. And that's kind of why we're looking at a 3-2 deficit right now.
Coming into this series, Dallas had a lot of injuries. Mm-hmm. A big one is the second line center, Rupe Hintz. Tell everyone how big of a loss that is for Dallas.
Yeah, and I'm going to go one level deeper because it's Hintz, and it's also, and it happened so long ago, people have forgotten, but Tyler Seguin's also done for the year. So this is a team that was built on, and I'll quibble a little bit. Dallas sort of has, it's not so much a 1C, 2C as a 1A, 1B, and it's Wyatt Johnston and Rupe Hintz. And depending on matchup and game situation, sometimes it's the Johnston-Rantanen duo that's kind of driving the bus. Other times it's Hintz Robertson. Sometimes it's Hintz, Rantanen, and Johnston. Anyways, it's that foursome. Yep. And by having those two lines, when you have Hintz and when you have Johnston in place, it means that then you have a third line built around Matt Duchene and Jamie Benn with a little bit less of an offensive burden on him, Justin Ritzkovy, and some of the depth players. And a lot of what Dallas has really flows from two powerful offensive lines and then complementary pieces. Losing Seguin earlier in the season, that was their depth, right? That was their extra center. Losing Hintz, right? You take the number one guy off of any team in the league, all of the sudden, look at the performance. Who scored? It's the Duchene Robertson line. And Dallas has gotten awfully one note without Hintz because everybody has to step up. Kind of everybody takes one step up the lineup, and now you've got a guy like Radek Faksa, who is a defensive specialist, a penalty kill guy, somebody that's really sort of built to bring that level of play. And all of a sudden, as a Stars fan, you're looking at him and saying, well, I hope his line can generate a little bit of offense. And that's just not the way this team is built. So he's one of those rare, he plays both ends of the ice. He can be on your power play. He can be on your penalty kill. He is fast. He can match up with anybody. He is good at everything. He is a good passer. He can finish. He does everything. And so taking him out at just everything is just a little bit harder for the Stars.
In terms of speed, he is right up there with Connor McDavid. I mean, he can absolutely fly. But you made a really good point, Wes. You made a really good point with the fact that you're taking guys that now when you have to bump that third line guy up to the second line, instead of playing 14 minutes, you're playing them 18 minutes. Instead of playing a guy 18, you're playing them 21, 22. You're putting them in positions that honestly expose them a little bit. Mm-hmm. And how does Dallas overcome this?
The power play. And also credit to, it's one of those classic examples of don't believe your sample size. Matt Duchene has been maligned as a playoff struggler for years and years. Well, look at
he's been good.
He's been great. And it's really the chance. So Dallas has survived because Matt Duchene has stepped up in a big way, because the power play is, even when they don't score, they should. This is as good. This reminds me of like peak McDavid Oilers level power play. They are dangerous every time they get the puck. And then Jason Robertson, he's working now. I think he scored in his last 7 playoff games. And those are the guys, right? In a series of tight margins, Dallas has been able to score when they get, even last night, right? They make a dumb mistake, give up a goal 1-0, power play, Heiskanen with a one-timer, all of a sudden it's tied up. And they've been able to lean on their special teams. And they attack in so many different ways with such a variety of, you can't, even if the same group you can't shut them down. And so the series, like what's been working is defensively, the team has just decided that you can't shoot from the middle of the ice, which is, where all the goals are. And then on the power play, when they get a chance, they convert. And that's why it's not, worse than it is.
It's amazing when you look at the stats right now. Through 5 games in this series, they are clicking at 39.1%. That's unbelievable.
And it is, and it's also the thing I would say is that if you're a puck nerd, right, watch some of the power play. It's not a one-trick show, right? There's a lot, especially in the regular season. Wyatt Johnston set a franchise record for power play goals, right? It's him in the middle, him in the bumper. But this is a team that they score from the point, they score from the wall, they score from down low. It's Rantanen, it's Robertson, it's Johnston, it's Heiskanen. Like it's a 5-man unit that can do so many different things and attack in so many different ways. They're Thanos, they're inevitable. And there's just last game right down 2, there's offsetting penalties, and they pull their goalie to create a 5-on-4 and they score on it. That was Robertson's goal in the 3rd last night. So they have such a variety of players and styles and ways to shoot and places to shoot for the extra man that it doesn't really matter what you do against them defensively. They're going to do something else and get a chance.
Wesley, I want to talk about Jason Robertson. He's one of those guys in the league. You never hear him talked amongst the top 5, but when you look at his stats and when you watch him play, he's as consistent as Ron Francis was back in the 90s. He's your consistent 80 to 90 point scorer. He's hit the 100 mark before. Tell us a little bit about Jason Robertson and what makes him special.
He reminds me a lot in terms of how he scores of Brett Hull. And that it's not an overwhelming physical attribute, although I'm sort of getting there on his wrist shot. Like it's just brutal. He's one of those guys that understands where to and this sounds stupid. You listen to this and think, well, everybody should know this, but guys don't. Just functionally in the context of a hockey game, Jason Robertson knows where the shooting lane is, knows where the passing lane is, and knows where he needs to be. And he's one of those guys that can consistently put himself in a position to execute. And he seems to understand, Ovechkin leads the league in goals, not because he shoots 40%, but because he shoots 400 times. And Robert, it's,
you're right.
Hockey is you can't wrestle if you don't weigh in. Like hockey is a sport where you don't score goals by being more precise. You score goals with volume. Nobody really influences their shooting percentage. And Robertson seems to really understand that. And he's a guy that will go through stretches where he's getting 5, 6, 7 shots a game. And just he consistently gets to the right spots, gets his shot off, reset, re-rack, try it again. and you get to the end of the game, like, oh wow, yeah, he had a goal and 2 helpers, or he had a couple goals. Like he executes that so consistently well that he's just always dangerous.
Coming into the series, there was some talk whether Philip Gustafsson or Jesper Wallstedt would get the start for Minnesota. Well, they went with Wallstedt. Were you a little bit surprised by that, considering Gustafsson has the experience?
No, because Wallstedt played against Dallas a couple times this year. He played very well. I think Minnesota was I think they were ready to go back to Gustafsson if it didn't work. And I think it was one of those plays where they had 2 excellent goaltenders. Wallstedt had been better recently, right? They kind of went with the ceiling. If Wallstedt goes, he kind of, to me, he seemed to have the higher potential, right? So I think that Minnesota went into it thinking we're going to ride the hot hand. We're going to play the guy that could really be something special. And if it doesn't work, we're going to go back to Gustafsson and nobody's going to blink. And I think that's exactly what we've seen. Is Wallstedt has been fantastic. He's a big piece of why Minnesota is succeeding. And if you look at, yes, the obvious storyline is Dallas can't score at even strength, and that's totally fair. But if you look at, chance generation, shooting, if you look at some of the underlyings, Dallas has actually been quite good at even strength. And the story is, the last time I checked, Minnesota's PDO was like 1.05, 1.04 or something like that. So Wallstedt has been a big part of why the series looks the way that it does. So the fact that they went with him was a mild surprise. The fact that they've stayed with him is not. It'd be stunning if they didn't.
The Stars are down 3-2 in the series. Their backs are against the wall. In the last 3 years, they've made it to the conference finals. They lost twice to Edmonton, and in 23, they lost to Vegas. How has Dallas played when they've had that must-win situation?
Sadly, they've played better in that situation when going. I think they've lost 9 of 11 of their last game ones. Dallas tends to play very well in close games because their style tends to be well suited. They are very tight defensively. I think they know that they have high level offensive talent. So Dallas as a team is very content to soak up pressure and wait for a chance. I think this is one of the kind of side sneaky benefits of having an excellent power play. If you know that it's there, if you know that you can convert when you get a chance, it's easier to get the team to buy into clogging the slot and manning your defensive assignment. It's easier to keep everybody home and doing the things that keep games tight when your team is confident, okay, well, when we get a bounce, when we get a power play, when something does break our way, we're likely to capitalize. And so I think in tight games, Dallas's defensive structure and Dallas's sort of the presence of elite players in their lineup, we just finished speaking about Jason Robertson, a guy like Mikko Rantanen. Look what he did in the postseason last year. Miro Heiskanen is fantastic. Thomas Harley has won, a bunch of big games. Wyatt Johnston, I think he's ended like 3 series before the age of 23. Kid's phenomenal. So this is a team that is, talk about unsung heroes. Look at Wyatt Johnston's career arc, and it'll blow your mind. But I think that's why Dallas comes into an elimination game with some level of confidence, because, hey, we want it tight. We want it a little bit chippy. We're okay with being, a small number of scoring chances. We're okay with 1 or 2 power plays. We might get 1 or 2 goals out of 1 or 2 power plays. So I think Dallas is well disposed towards an elimination game in general. So I think that's kind of why they tend to play well with their back against the walls. That's just their system is better in those situations than it is. And let's open it up.
Okay, Wesley, we're going to play fortune teller here. You are head coach Glenn Gulletson. What's the one chess piece move you can make to turn Game 6 and Game 7?
Oof, I have a terrible answer for this because I just at this point I don't think that I think that your move is you have a team with guys with pedigree. You have a team of guys that have been there before. You have a team of guys that have won series before. Dallas doesn't really have that like ace prospect or black ace sitting around to kind of inject into lineup. There's no, that was Maverick Bourque and he's a regular. They're too beat up to have that guy that's sort of iced out of the lineup. So I think if you're the Stars, in a lot of ways, your path forward here is keep at it and hope you get the bounces that you seem due. There's just, I think you maybe look at, you're going to ride instead of going with a top 4, I think you look at, your top 4 is some combination of Heiskanen, Lindell, and Harley. and you really lean on those guys, and you're kind of you're downing the minutes of like Tyler Myers, Liam Bichelle, Nils Lundqvist's sneaky huge piece didn't make the trip. So I think if you're Dallas, you're really pushing minutes onto your top three defensively, and then offensively, I think you want to get into the slot more, but in terms of like roster moves and lineup tweaks, I think at this point you got to do what got you here, and you hope that you get something greasy past Wallstedt, and maybe Mikko gets untracked, and maybe Wyatt finds something, and you hope that some of the guys that have been there before shake out of whatever's going on, versus a situation where I don't think there's anything like. And again, this is going to sound like sour grapes, and I think Minnesota's doing an excellent job. They're a fantastic team. That's why we're where we are. I don't think Minnesota is doing anything special to stymie the Dallas Stars. I don't think there's a secret sauce that they're employing to beat the team. They're throwing, they've got their top six, right? And they're throwing Kaprizov and Boldy and Faber and Hughes and a little bit of Eriksson Ek as well, but they're throwing their top guys out there. And so far, their top guys have been one goal better than Dallas's top guys. And at this point, if you're Dallas, you hope that changes.
You almost are waiting for Mikko Rantanen to have that Game 7 moment like he did last year against Colorado, where he single-handedly turned the third period of that hockey game.
Absolutely. You're hoping for that. You're hoping for Thomas Harley. He's a guy that, Miro Heiskanen missed extended time last year with a Mark Stone-induced knee injury. And a lot of Dallas is a relatively thin defense, right? Top heavy, but the bottom is a little questionable. So a lot of fans thought they were cooked when he went out. Well, Thomas Harley stepped up and played his out of his mind after Four Nations. So if you're a Stars fan, that's another spot where you may be able to find, if he finds another gear, all of a sudden you've got a two-headed transition monster, and you're going to start putting some good pressure on Minnesota. Wyatt Johnston's been quiet. I talked about him earlier, like that whole Rantanen line. Right. It's for the most part, it's been Rantanen, Johnston, and Justin Ritzkovian, although Sam Steele pops up there from time to time. I think if you're the Stars, yeah, you've got the Rantanen factor. You've got a couple lottery tickets in the lineup that haven't come up good yet. And I think you continue to put them in positions where they might, and you hope for a good spot. Because conversely, you're looking at Minnesota, and the guys that you expected to drive the bus are driving the bus, right? They're playing Quinn Hughes 36, 37 minutes a night, Brock Faber as well. Then it's Kaprizov and it's Boldy, and that's the story. And if you're the Stars, you know that this is a strength on strength situation. You know where it's coming from, and you try and minimize them and maximize your own guys.
Let's head over to the rest of the Western Conference. Colorado. Wes, as you and I talked about, Colorado basically won that series in 3 games.
Yeah, it wasn't particularly close. And I think the terrifying thing for the rest of the conference is they have time to get healthy. In the past, Colorado, they're a wagon top to bottom, but they're a wagon that does have two, Makar and McKinnon are the guys, right? And in the past, they've been undone. Neither has missed significant time, but they've been banged up in the past, and Nichushkin's missed some time. Gabe Landeskog, it's really impressive that he's playing. So if you're an opponent of the Colorado Avalanche, you are looking in absolute horror at the fact that they've had there's an adage, right? To win a Stanley Cup, you need a short series. Well, guess what? The number 1 seed in the entire league is going to have a week off before round 2, and that sucks for everybody that doesn't like the Avalanche. And, the other series, Vegas and Utah, those are, and this could be proven very wrong, but those are sort of secondary series. I don't know that of those 4 teams, Vegas, Utah, Edmonton, Anaheim, none of those teams are on the same level of Colorado, Dallas, and Minnesota. They're just not. And
let me ask you this. Yeah. Is the second round, Colorado, whoever they face, is that your quasi Western Conference final?
I think injuries are always going to be a question mark, right? Because Colorado will also have to get through a very good team in round 2, whether that's Minnesota or whether that's Dallas. But I think so. I just think with Edmonton, the goaltending hasn't come together. Do you really look at how they're struggling against Anaheim defensively, and then put Kadri and McKinnon and Makar and Nichushkin? Like, do you really think that they're going to be better defensively against any of the teams left in the bracket? And then you've got Vegas, who's their goalie?
Chris Knobloch's going back to Connor Ingram.
Yep. And honestly,
he doesn't know what else to do.
He's got, they knew they had a problem. They shot their shot and they got Tristan Jarry. And that's, that they are who they are. So Edmonton, I think, is one of those, like, and I said this one of the years they beat the Stars. Edmonton's always going to be frisky because they've got Bouchard, Draisaitl, and McDavid. And when you have like 3 of the top 20 players in the world and 2 of the top 5, you can, if McDavid goes nuts, it almost doesn't matter what you do, and you always have that card. But it really has gotten to the point with Edmonton where it feels like that's your path. And it's really hard to McDavid a series 4 times in a row, as we've seen over the last 3 seasons.
What about the Utah-Vegas series? That one is a peculiar one because you look at games 3 and games 4, Vegas 5-on-5 was the much better team. Utah has just been the more opportunistic team.
Yep.
And of course, Vegas gets the overtime goal in game 4.
Yeah. And I think part of that is Vegas is, they've also had problems in the crease. Is Carter Hart really a guy that you expect to be the starter on a Stanley Cup contender? I think those teams are more limited. I think they've got more question marks on the roster. They're clearly good. But I think that series is more chaos puck. And I think a part of me really wants to see like Utah and Anaheim in the second round. I think those games will be the perfect level of insanity.
Over under 7.5,
right? For just per team or combined, right? But
I was about to say it's going to be flying up and down the ice. There's so much young talent on both of those teams. They're probably both a year early, but it'd be really fun to watch.
It would be, and again, the reality though is, barring some dramatic turn of fortune in the other half of the bracket, none of those 4 teams are going to be favored in a matchup against they're just not. And things happen. Hockey is hockey. But in terms of teams to really pay attention to, right now it's Colorado's world, and we're all living in it. And maybe the survivor of Dallas, Minnesota, that's going to be an excellent team with some wear and tear. Maybe they do the thing where they jump on a team that's been off and steal a game or 2 early and turn it into a really fascinating series. But the bracket right now has set up to maximize. This is why you win the league, right? This is maximized Colorado's advantage for the playoffs, and they look incredibly strong.
Wesley, tell us about Defending Big D.
Yeah, it's our humble little fan community. We've been keeping track of the stars for a while now. It's this is where the podcast we host, Stargazing, is centered, and it's just a nice look to a team that doesn't always get the same high profile attention as some of the others. And I'm sure that as a Bolts podcast, you don't always get, I think, the respect that you're afforded either, compared to some of the teams that move the needle. So it's our opportunity to shine a light on the fact of, right now, 2 of the playoffs' top 5 leading scorers are Jason Robertson and Matt Duchene. And Miro Heiskanen is one of the best defenders in the league, non-Makar category. Like, it's our chance to give a little focus onto those players and a team that has been 3-time Western Conference finalist, right in the mix again, right? They were like 15 games undefeated this season, neck and neck with Colorado. This is a powerhouse, and it's our opportunity to give a little focus and a little bit more attention to them.
The Stargazing podcast, you can get it pretty much everywhere podcasts are found, correct?
Yeah, everywhere. We record during the regular season. It's once a week, but during the playoffs, we're going after every game. Yeah, we're on all the platforms. Stargazing. Mark Zimmerman is my co-host. He is a fantastic stat guy. Really, really, I think blends well. There's the stuff behind the scenes with the eye test on the ice, which I think is equally important. So I hope that we do a good job trying to make some of the underlyings accessible and not getting so far into our own heads about it that we lose sight of the will and the skill that wins the games. And then, Kathleen Tibbetts, our producer, just does a phenomenal job putting it together. So it's been a fantastic podcast. I've really enjoyed doing it, and I really love covering the team.
Well, check out Defending Big D, defendingbigd.com. Wesley Lawrence, thank you so much for joining us today. Let's talk a little bit later on in the playoffs.
My pleasure. Hopefully my team will still be around to do that talking.
Hopefully ours will as well. Thanks again for your time, Wes.
My pleasure.
Justin, let's take a look around the NHL. The Philadelphia Flyers defeated the Pittsburgh Penguins by a score of 1-0 in overtime last night. They advanced to the second round against Carolina. In the Atlantic Division, we're still waiting to see if Buffalo can finish off Boston. What's your thoughts right now in the Eastern Conference?
It's really lining up for Carolina, man. Like Carolina's got to be licking their chops. They get the time off. They had a couple people nicked up in that series. Now they know they're playing Philly, which should be entertaining. I think it's going to be a really interesting series. You got the youth and energy from Philly going against a veteran Carolina team that really needs to get it done. Meanwhile, they can watch the Atlantic guys continue to beat the crap out of each other. Um, you know, Boston's given Buffalo everything they can possibly hope for. The second round's going to be a very interesting round for whoever comes out of the Atlantic.
Justin, I think Carolina would rather face Philadelphia. I think they got the better matchup rather than facing Pittsburgh. Philadelphia's youth started the show during that series, and last night they were not the better team. They just had the better goaltender. Let's head out west. You have Colorado, who basically had a easy 4-game sweep. They're going to be waiting on the Wild Dallas Stars winner. But over in the Pacific Division, you still have 2 series that are unsettled. Vegas won in double overtime last night. They have a 3-2 lead over Utah. And Anaheim is trying to close out the Edmonton Oilers and whoever the hell they decide to throw in net. It's not going to be Tristan Jarry. It's going to be Connor Ingram. What's your thoughts on those 2 series?
Yeah, I mean, it is so funny that, you got quote unquote close series over in the West, but it's like the chaos series in Anaheim and Edmonton. It's the Lightning are just kind of looking at it and be like, can we get some of those goals? Maybe just spread some for us. You watch a team play, you're like, why does it look so easy for them? We're skating through mud here, and those teams are just going back and forth down the ice, scoring goals, overtime winners. I mean, Alex Killorn's got a couple goals over there. Utah, Vegas, like we said it before the series, this is kind of nobody knows what this series is going to be like, and it's played out pretty well. Vegas, I think, is kind of starting to come through. I think they're a slightly better team when they're healthy, but not
They're
by
the better
much.
5-on-5 team.
Yeah, and it's starting to show, I think, in that. So, and again, Utah is another one of these teams that's kind of young. Maybe they haven't been in this position yet. Closing out series is tough. Can Edmonton, complete the comeback? I think if they win Game 6, I think a lot of money's gonna be put on them. But yeah, it's just been a good first round. It's had a little bit of everything. Even the Pittsburgh game last night, like you said, it's just a good goaltender pulling through. I think that's kind of been the one series where the goaltender's made a big difference. Is Vladar has just been the best player in that series.
Vladar played really well, and honestly, Arthur Shelos played out of his mind. He was tremendous last night. It was a game that if they played that game 10 times, it's probably a 4-3 game with the high quality chances that both teams had. But it'll be interesting to see a young Philadelphia team go up against an experienced Carolina team, and a Carolina team that, as you said, looks poised to make a run through the East. Justin, I know you have to recap last night's game. What else is going on at Raw Charge?
Yeah, we got that out. We'll probably have some stuff a little bit later this afternoon, just kind of talking about either, the things that, Cooper said in his press conference, just what can the Lightning do to win Game 6. Again, like, I'm not super down about this series right now. It's playing out exactly like we thought it would. 2 teams that are close in talent, battling back and forth, making adjustments. Marty made his big adjustment. He brought in Brandon Gallagher, who Lightning fans may remember from 2014, for God's sakes, when he did this to them. I think he had 3 goals in that series. Him and Dale Weiss just absolutely lighting the Lightning up from that depth position, from that 3rd and 4th lines. So we'll take a look at that. Hey, Game 6, let's have fun. Sure, 30% of only 30% of the teams have won after losing Game 5, but still 30% of the teams have won. That's not a small number.
To advance in the playoffs, you have to win 4 before you lose 4.
Exactly.
That's all that matters. It doesn't matter if it's 7 games or 4 games. You just have to do it.
If you save your best 2 games for Game 6 and 7, then so be it. So, I think that's the one positive you're going to hold on to, is that the Lightning, as Coach Cooper always says, they've got better in them, and I think we're going to see it in Game 6. I think that's going to be the kitchen sink game where they throw everything out there, and we'll see if they can take it to that next gear and pull out a win, and then everybody has fun on Sunday.
Well, that is all for today's podcast. The Lightning, they play Friday night at 7 o'clock in Montreal. It'll be Game 6, and we'll be back right after that for the instant reaction. The podcast will drop on Saturday. We'd like to thank Wesley Lawrence from Defending Big D for coming on the show to talk about the Minnesota Wild and the Dallas Stars. You can read Justin each and every day at www.rawcharge.com. For Justin Godfrey, I'm Jason Linkus. Thanks for joining us today, and go Bolts.
Go Bolts.
Thank you for listening to Backchecking the Bolts. We are free and available on all platforms, including Apple, Spotify, iHeartRadio, Amazon, YouTube, and Deezer. If you enjoyed it, please be sure to subscribe and leave a review. You can follow Justin on Blue Sky at rawcharge.com. You can follow the show on X at Tampa_Bolts_pod and on Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube at Backchecking the Bolts. If you're interested in advertising on the show or partnering with us, you can find more information in the show notes or email Jason at backcheckingthebolts@yahoo.com.